Welcome to Single and Cooking. My name is Laura Martinetti, and today I'm actually going to be making for you a steak. A lot of people always ask, how do you make a steak? How do you know when it's done? Do you have to put a knife in there to check or inspect? What do you do to make sure it's done to the way that you want it? Because some people like their steaks rare, some like them medium rare, which is the way I like them, some medium, and some very well done. So I'm going to show you all of that today and give you a couple tricks and tips to make the juiciest steak that you can ever make. Sometimes when you come home from work, you don't want to fuss and you don't want to make this whole elaborate meal. You just want a steak and some vegetables. So I'm going to show you how to do that. You want to get yourself a hot pan. Just put it on. No, don't put any oil in it. Just leave it like this and make sure, just put your hand over it. When you feel that it's hot, it's ready to go. So right here we have a New York strip steak. Make sure that each side is seasoned. With this, we want to salt and pepper it. And you want to do both sides. And the beauty about this is that you can put anything you want on the steak. If you like spice, you could put some cayenne or anything like that. So I just put the salt and pepper, very basic. I'm actually going to add a little bit of smoked paprika to give it a different flavor. Now what I like to do is massage it into the meat, just to make sure it gets in there really well. And then we're going to turn it over. And we're going to do the same exact thing. And then it's ready to go. You want to make sure your pan is hot. Like I said, just put your hand over. If you feel some nice heat coming in there, that's what you want. You're going to put the oil in there, just like that. Roll it around a little bit. Make sure that it's evenly coated, and there you go. Now, we're not going to go back and forth, back and forth. We're going to leave it on here for about 2 to 3 minutes. A lot of the questions that I am asked about how can you tell when your steak is done to the way that you want it done. This is the guide that I go by to answer these questions. Just take your hand, and in the inside of your palm, if you like a rare steak, if you touch the top of the steak and you press in, that would be a rare steak. It's very squishy. If you like the medium rare cut, what you want to do is go to the top of this part of your hand and you press down. Still, there's a little bit of a squish, but there's a slight give. Now, the last thing, if you want a well done steak, just go to the top of your thumb, and if you press down, you know how you feel that resistance? That would be a well done steak. So those are the ways that you can make sure that your steak is done to perfection. So what you want to do when it's time to turn the steak over, which is now, you want to look for this crust. Look at that. That's perfect. Steak is ready to go. It's got a little resistance, but it's still a little squishy. That's what you want. Now, a nice little trick that I learned from a very well-known chef, put some butter in the corner, let it melt, pick up the steak, and render the fat right in here. You want to keep it on there and just cook this. You take this and just drape it over the steak. The steak is done. Find a flat surface, take some aluminum foil, and you're going to put the steak on top of the aluminum foil. Middle like this. And then going to bring the sides together. Bring these up. We're going to let this rest. The reason why you let a steak rest is you need to let the juices go back into the steak. Because what happens is, once it's cooked like that, if you start slicing into it, the juices are going to come right out of it, and it's going to start to become a drier steak. And you want the juiciest steak possible. So leave it here and let it rest for, I'd say 10 minutes at the most. As you can see, this is what the steak left behind, which is exactly what we want. All of these are bits of flavor, and we want all of this. You never want to waste anything in the kitchen if you don't have to. So there's still the leftover oil, and there's still the unsalted butter. So since the butter is unsalted, I'm going to put a little bit of salt in there to flavor it. That's what I love about unsalted butter. You can put your own flavoring. A little bit of pepper in there. I put 2 cloves of garlic in here for additional flavor. And I have all kinds of mushrooms. I have diced mushrooms. I have 1/4 and 1/8 mushrooms. And I have sliced mushrooms. I'm going to let these soak up all of this delicious, wonderful flavor because this is going to go along with our steak. But don't worry, the liquid isn't going away. We're actually going to make a sauce out of all of this. Now I'm going to add the onions because we want a nice bite to this with our steak. I cut the mushrooms in a couple of different ways, 3 different ways. So with this onion, I cut it in 2 different ways. I diced it, and I also cut it lengthwise. When you cut it lengthwise, there's all these little pieces here. So I'm taking them all out and just putting them in. So I have 2 different types of cuts of onions in there. Keeps it exciting. We have 2 jalapenos. You can use a hotter pepper if you wish. There's the serrano peppers, there's the habanero peppers. With the jalapeno, what you want to do, the part that makes it so spicy is this pith in here and the seeds. But even when you remove it, it's still a very spicy dish, but it's not overwhelmingly spicy. So there are different gadgets to remove seeds and things like that for seed removal, but just take a regular spoon. That's all you need. So just have a little bowl nearby and just very easily remove these seeds. If you have gloves, great, you can use gloves. Most people don't because they don't think about putting gloves on when they're in the kitchen. But your hands will be hot, so don't touch your face or your eyes or anything like that because the seeds are very, very hot. So I'm just going to cut it right in half, make it very easy. I kind of pile them. See how I pile them into each other like this? Just cut it right in half. And then I just do a little dicing. I don't want to cut them too small because I want to taste them. I want to feel them in there. Put them right in with the onions and the mushrooms and the butter. One of my big things is to have color, some sort of color, in any dish that I make. One of the other important things that you should do when you're cooking is taste. Always make sure that you taste your dish and make sure there's enough salt or pepper or anything like that. But if you're ever in a situation where you put a little too much salt in the dish and there's really no going back, if it's the kind of dish that can handle this, potatoes, if you put potatoes in there somewhere, that can absorb some of the salt and make your dish very tasty, actually. So that's a little trick that I've learned over the years. Now, we need to make the sauce. So since it's steak, I'm going to be using beef broth, and I always get the least amount of sodium, so I can add my own salt. What I love about using beef broth with steak, not only because of the flavor, but the color of it deepens as it cooks. And add the cornstarch to it. The cornstarch is a thickening agent. You can actually use cornstarch or arrowroot. So I'm going to do 2 teaspoons. I'm going to whisk it. And the mushrooms, of course, are wilting down, but the vegetables still have a hard texture to them, which is what you want. Now it's time to add the liquid. This is the beef broth with the cornstarch. And we're going to let this reduce for about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes typically. Then, as you watch it cook, it's going to start to get thicker. So we're going to remove the steak from the foil. Put it right there. Oh, that looks so good. So you can take a nice healthy spoonful of this and put it right on the steak. I'm going to add alongside with this steak a bite of freshness. I have arugula, which is a nice peppery texture, and I have the creaminess of the Parmesan cheese in there as well. And then I have a little bit of oil and vinegar. Now, I happen to use flavored oil and vinegar, and I used apricot vinegar and Persian lime oil just to give it that extra level of flavor, but you can use any one you want. If you just like regular olive oil and red wine vinegar, there is no right way to do it. Just do this any way you want. This is simple. Make it for yourself. Here is our finished meal. The juicy stripped steak. It was cooked in oil and a little bit of butter as a finish on the end. We seasoned it very well. We have the onions, we have the jalapenos for an extra level of spice, and we have the onions and the mushrooms. And mushrooms are cut 3 different ways. The onions are cut 2 different ways, and we have a nice, wonderfully fresh, peppery, creamy bite of this salad. Isn't that gorgeous? Thank you for joining me today in my kitchen and allowing me to make this steak for you. It's fun to be single and looking, but it is delicious to be single and cooking. Mmm. Mmm.